Hello everyone, here I'm back with a video lecture and today we're going to start with the chapter number 2, that is basically the kinematics concept for analyzing human motion. So chapter number 2 as we are going to discuss in this video is the introduction and the forms of motion. So before starting any chapter we are going to discuss certain things, that is basically what we are going to study in this chapter. So first of all, the forms of motions, as you have know that linear, angular and the general forms basically. After that you are going to describe or discuss the reference position. We are going to discuss the anatomical reference positions, the anatomical planes, axes, how they are associated with the human body, and with that we are going to see what are the appropriately used directional terms or joint movement terminologies we are going to discuss here. And then we are going to see what are the available instruments that are helpful to measure any of the kinematic quantities. So majorly, as you have know that the Sasson Hall is the book that is start from any of the for starting with the specific questions that are relying on this whole chapter. So starting from the very first question, they're asked that is it best to observe walking gait from a side view, front view, or the back view? That means how, as a therapist, you are going to observe a walking gait. Like what type of gait observation style you choose, from the side, from the front, or from the back. The second question is basically related to the distance. Okay, from what distance can a coach best observe a pitcher throwing style? Okay, so optimal distance what you can choose as a therapist to analyze any of the pitchers or the sportsman person throwing style. After that, we are going to discuss what are the advantages and disadvantages of analyzing a movement capture on a video. That means what are the pros and cons of video based movement analysis? That means you cannot basically, or you can just say that what are the specific advantages of that video based movement analysis and what are the disadvantages of the video based movement analysis. After that, they have asked, to the untrained observer, there may be no difference in the forms displayed by the elite hurdler or a novice hurdler, or in the functioning of a normal knee or an injured or partially rehabilitated knee. That is basically means that as an untrained observer, if you are consider yourself as untrained observer, what you have getting or you may have struggled to differentiate any of the elite, basically the professional athlete versus the novice, that means any new athlete. So what are basically how you can differentiate both of these elites in a basically what type of game? Hurdler majorly the race that is including the hurdles in between them, or the normal or injured knee, that means any of the majorly untrained observer cannot differentiate very well or may have struggled to differentiate the normal or injured movement or normal or rehabilitated movement. So majorly they are going to discuss in this chapter we are going to discuss these kind of questions. And after that, what skills are necessary and what procedures are used for effective analysis of the human movement kinematics. Basically, what skills are required? Majorly, skills and procedures are required for effective human movement kinematic analysis. So, importance of terminologies is very important. Okay, so importance of mastering any subject specific terminologies are important, as we have discussed that here, or we are going to discuss in this chapter in a very detail what are the specific terminologies we are going to use, and the value of the general analysis protocols adaptable to specific problems. And after that, we are going to see introduction to human movement terminologies and qualitative problem solving approach, like how the human movement terminologies and the qualitative problem solving approach interlink with each other and we are just going to discuss the basic introduction in the human movement terminologies. So majorly, this chapter starts with the forms of motion, as we have know that, and we have discussed before also in the starting of this chapter, that we are going to discuss in this lecture is majorly the forms of motion. So the forms of motion is basically understanding different types of forms of types of motion is fundamental in biomechanics and any of the human movement analysis. Most human motion is the combination of different forms which can be categorized into linear, angular, and the general motion. So let's break these concepts down in a detail. Okay, starting from the very first, general motion. So general motion is majorly okay. We can just scroll it down. As you have known that the in your book there are the linear and the angular motion is first, but we are going to discuss general motion in first because there are certain things that you have to know. Okay, regarding the general motion, because general motion is the combination of both linear and angular. Okay, so, as we have discussed before, that normally in a human body there is majorly the general motion involvement. We cannot say that the movement is only dependent on the linear motion and the angular motion. Okay, the human movement consists of general motion. So, for effective movement analysis, it is helpful to break complex motions into linear or angular concepts in a very different ways. Okay, so the linear motion, as you have know that, is also called as translinkary motion or the translation. Occurs when all parts of an object move in a same direction at the same speed. That means if a car is going to move and in car is going in a straight direction, and if they are going with 110 kilometers per hour, that means the same speed, there is no fluctuation in any speed and there is no fluctuation in a direction. That means the car is going in a straight road. There is no east, west, north, south or directional change. So that is basically means that the car is moving in a linear motion. So majorly what we are going to discuss here is that there are two types of linear motion. Rectilinear motion, okay, majorly the rectilinear motion is basically depending on the, okay, first we can highlight this so that you can guys can understand easily. So rectilinear motion is basically the movement along a straight line. Okay, as we are going to discuss here in an example, a motorcyclist moving in a straight path without changing any body posture. That means the motion is rectilinear. What is basically the curvilinear is basically movement along a curved path. Okay, the movement is basically on the curved path. So that means example, if you can just say in an example, a skier jumps from a gully with all body parts moving together along a curved trajectory. Basically, we can discuss here is there is a motorcyclist, as we have discussed in a rectilinear. Okay, just see this within something else. Okay, so this is a picture present in your book, figure 2.1, that shows basically the rectilinear and the curvilinear motion in a very well way. Okay, what is basically the rectilinear, as you have here seen here, is the basically the normal motion of the body. Okay, it doesn't change any of the direction, or you can say any of the path. It just moves in a straight path without any change in your body movement, without any change in a motorcycle movement, without any change in your path movement. Okay, like you can just going in a straight path, motorcyclist is moving in a straight way, there is no change in a body posture. But curvilinear is basically the, as the name shows, that there is any curve. Okay, just take this example as a Just take this as an example, or high jump as an example. If a movement is basically the high jump, okay, when the athlete coming back towards the ground, okay, but their body doesn't change its path, okay, the same speed, same direction, but the path is basically slight curved, not an angular, not any any movement around any imaginary axis of rotation. Okay, this is just the movement along a curved path. That is basically called as curvilinear motion. A body in pure linear motion moves as a unit, meaning there is no relative movement between its parts. For example, a sleeping passenger on a smooth airplane ride, okay, as you are going to discuss in your book. This is the example that is present on your book. Okay, just we are going to highlight this example and then we are going to discuss this. Okay, sleeping passenger here. So a sleeping passenger is basically on a smooth airplane ride is in a linear motion. Okay, in a smooth airplane ride is in a linear motion. There is no movement in his body, normal, same speed, same direction. When they reach for a maximum, their body no longer move as a unit and breaking a pure linear motion because its body has changed its path. Okay, there is some kind of movement in his body that changes path, or you can say that the changing its majorly you can say that there is some certain things or certain changes in his body that causes a pure linear motion or the ideal linear motion change, because in a normal human body you cannot say a human can just stay in a long flight or in a just stay in a single posture. So there is no point of saying that there is pure linear motion is present in that human body. There is certain kind of, you can just say that a kind of a motion, or you can just say that the breakdown of any pure linear motion. There are certain kind of movements, or you can say that the moves patient or a person can move to break that normal linear motion. Okay, so what he can do was that pure linear motion is no longer occurring because the position of the arm relative to the body has changed, as because when the person is awakens he reaches for the magazine, as you have discussed. So when he reaches for the magazine, so pure translation is no longer occurring, and because the position of the arm that is basically relative to the body before starting that position now has changed. Okay, now has changed its motion, now has changed its body movement. So this is not remain same as the pure linear motion as we have discussed before, as a sleeping passenger was in a smooth airplane flight. So that is basically the breakdown of the linear motion. Curvilinear and the rectilinear is the two motions. As you know that the skiers, or as we have discussed that the rectilinear is basically the straight linear pathway. Okay, the curvilinear when the pathway is just changed. There is no change in the direction or the speed. There is just a change in the pathway, or that is basically not the complete pathway. That is just slight curve in that pathway, as you can stay in a car and just there is a slight turn in that same pathway. There is not a complete turn, you have taken a turn in that uh, you can just say that in that path or on the road. So that is basically the simple example. There is a slight curve in that road. You can just have taken that. So that is basically the curvilinear. So majorly the rectilinear and the curvilinear are these two. So the angular motion is something else. The angular motion is basically rotations around a central imaginary line known as the axis of rotation, which is oriented perpendicular to the plane in which the rotation occurs. So, before starting this explanation, we are going to discuss this with an example first. Okay, just take this as an example. Okay, we can just take this as an example. A gymnast or an athlete, basically, a gymnast performing a giant circle on a bar, as you have know that the full body rotate around or it completes its rotation around a single bar is known as the joint circle. As you have know that this is the start and she is going to complete this in a full rotational, or you can just say that the full circle, the body rotates around the fixed bar. Okay, that means the body rotates around a fixed imaginary axis that is considered here as a fixed bar. So that is basically the gymnast performing a joint circle on a bar is an example of the angular motion, a rotational. An axis of rotation is basically an imaginary line, okay, perpendicular to the plane of rotation. So that means different parts of the object move at different speeds relative to each other. That means different parts of the object means the different body parts, and at the different speeds they can rotate around the any axis of rotation or the any imaginary axis. So that is basically the angular motion. Angular motion is basically easy to understand because there is one fixed point and you can just perform a complete circle or complete rotation around it. So after discussing that, we are going to see the general motion as we have discussed before also, that the general motion is the combination of both. So the general motion is the combination of both because in a normal human being there is no movement that is purely linear or purely angular. So a football, as you have known that the general motion example, football kicked and over and translates through the air while also rotating around its central axis. Okay, that is basically a simple example. And again, you can take an example. A runner moves forward due to angular movements of the hips, knee, and ankles. As you have known that the football cannot kick itself, right? A runner have to move forward. That is basically the linear motion. Due to angular movements of the hip, knee, and ankles, a runner can perform a running. Okay. At the same time, a footballer can kick the football, so it translates through the air while also rotating around its central axis. So this is basically an example of the general motion, or you can just say that a throwing arm, a person can or a sports person can throw a ball. That is also a form of, that is also an example of general motion. So majorly, this is the major three forms of general motion. So now we are going to discuss the small point that is mechanical systems. Okay. So mechanical systems in motion analysis is before analyzing a movement is important to find the mechanical systems of interest. That means the system could be the entire human body, a single limb, or even an external object. That means before starting any of the analysis, you have to understand that which part of the body you are going to discuss. Okay, like if you are choosing any of the single limb, like upper limb or right arm, you can just take in the complete limb, including the arm, forearm, wrist, or you can just say the hand. So that is basically the single limb, or you can just take the upper limbs both from the both sides and the lower limbs from the both sides, any of the, or you can just discuss the entire human body. That is basically the examples of the mechanical systems you are chosen to discuss any of the mechanical, or you can just discuss any of the analysis of movement. Okay, so this is the basically mechanical system of interest. that you are going to choose to before starting any of the analysis. Okay, so that you this is easy for you to understand that before starting any of the analysis, you just have know in your mind that okay, I am going to focus on the single limb, or I am going to focus on his lower limbs, or I am going to focus on his upper limbs. So majorly the mechanical systems in motion analysis is basically related to that. So we have discussed in this lecture is basically the linear motions, the angular motions, general motions, and before starting that, we have discussed certain questions arising in this chapters, and after that, we have discussed the mechanical system selection, that what kind of part or what body part we are going to now choose to analyze. Basically, it is important to choose define the object or body part under analysis is essential for accurate movement evaluation. Okay, so thanks for watching. If you have any query, you can ask in the comment section, and if you have any of the issue, you can ask in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Hope you can understand this.